Hey everyone, back here in our volleyball coverage continue here on segment 3. We're going to start with a pass. Obviously, we're going to talk about kids across the back row doing some of that dirty work, be it a serve receive or some of these big time kill attempts, as I said in segment 2, talking about all the elite hitters we have. Obviously, you need someone there in the back row digging some things up and keeping the possession alive for their team, the rally alive. And really, if you think about it, over the years, very few teams, very few programs have done this as well as Adena. And I think that's going to continue to be their staple this year, and I think they're going to do it as well once again. The two-shade blue there in the across the back row, led by Cameron Carroll. Cameron really does a super job. She stays low, she works hard, she's quick, she has great volleyball IQ, great volleyball instincts. And it's not just her ability, but really it's the entire collection of Adena passers. You know, when I think of, again, as I said earlier, I don't know exactly what they're going to do as setter, but you know, you have athletes like the Lovelies that can defend. You know, Dariff, you have Garrison, Olivia Riley does a super job passing the volleyball. So they just have a long list of kids that can really, really defend. Now, speaking of depth, if you caught segment 2, you talked about a long roster of athletes that Zane Trace has. They have a libero of their own that really put up big numbers last year in Lexi Betts, another kid that plays with a lot of energy, brings a lot of communication, just a lot of energy to their rotation, the way she can keep things alive. I know Elizabeth Harbor's also giving them some passing, and then so many of those hitters with Bennett and company coming off the net, Hill and some of those kids coming off the net and being a part of that defense as well. Those are two teams that really jump out at me in that aspect. Now, Huntington and Southeastern, I talked about them graduating their setter play, and as they go to fill that void, I just wonder exactly what that will do to some of their passing or some of their overall defensive scheme. You know, with Steele and company there at Huntington, I love Harmony Hindenburg. I think she's terrific. I think that'll give them a little bit of a nucleus piece to build some of that defense around. At Southeastern, another outstanding passer in our league is Lexi Lockwood. All you have to do is go back last year, look at Southeastern when she didn't play, and then look at Southeastern when she did play, and that'll kind of tell you the story. Now, this year, we'll coach Coker in her first year look to do some creative things with Lexi. I don't know, you know, I've heard some different things, but nonetheless, she's still going to be there, a part of that serve receive and a part of that defensive of effort. So those are some kids to certainly keep your eye on. Now, graduation, Southeastern's one team there with Skylar Heiss, obviously. Unio's another team really hit by graduation in this area. When you think of Pinkerton and Cottrell and Coleman and some of those athletes that you lose, I think it's a fair assessment to call that a question mark for the Tanks early in the year. You've heard me say before, I think they have a lot of ability at setter. They have a long list of athletes at the net, but a lot of those athletes at the net have very limited, either due to just being young in the past or maybe hurt, have very limited experience playing varsity back row, especially in the SVC against some of the serving and hitting that they're going to face. So I do think they have some options there with a Sophie Coleman, with an Ava Eldridge, and some of those kids involved in their defense. But again, what are they going to do at the setter position, and what's that passing going to look like? So I think that's a big question mark. Certainly haven't forgotten about Westfall. They're the team that that returns as the defending champ and deserve that. That title, with the elite talent they have at the top of their roster. But I think it's fair to say that Westfall's always kind of been able to go as their passing goes. Really, over the last 5 or 6 years, the years they figured out the passing, the setting, and the hitting seems to be there. And I think that's the case this year. I documented on the first 2 segments some really good setting, some really good hitting. How well will the Lady Mustangs serve receive? I think if the answer to that's really well, then I expect them to be right back up there contending once again. Well, let's go ahead and move down. I talked on the settings show that Paint Valley is looking to make a little bit of a change here this year. Avery McFadden, in the scrimmage I saw, doesn't mean that's what they'll do, but in the scrimmage I saw, Avery McFadden moved to the libero spot. You still have Brumfield there, who's really had some nice numbers her first 2 years. Look for her in her 3rd year to take another step as a really good passer. Piketon, I know, has a concern in terms of passing. The one thing I will say there, Elena Lytle enters her 2nd year, in my 10 to 15 years of covering SVC volleyball, Adena, that was as a player, was probably as good as anyone I've ever seen in the back row. So, I think the more time she's able to put into the Piketon program, I just don't think that's going to be a weakness for much longer. I'm not saying in year 2 all is cured, but I do think that's something that they can take a positive step there. I know they were a pretty young team last year, but they did graduate who I thought was their best passer there, McDowell, there at the end of the year. So just some things to think about. But I think when you start to break down these attacks and you start to look at how teams go, I think the passer is often overlooked, and I think, as always, it will play a big factor. So again, if you haven't had a chance, go back, listen to segment 1 on setter, segment 2 on depth across the net, and then check us out later this month, SVC Sports Talk, returning for season 10. And we'll obviously have plenty of volleyball coverage throughout it also. Always check us out on SVCSportsZone.com. We'll always keep it 100% SVC. 100% of the time.